Alright, let's take a look at some examples of how we can use our buttons now. We'll start with our normal button and then use our toggle button in the next lesson. So I've got a little blank project set up in AutoPlay Media Studio, and I'm going to minimize it slightly so I can see my desktop. And I'll just drag my button in and drop it down on my stage. There we go, the button has become part of the project. Now buttons in AutoPlay Media Studio can do just about anything that any other event can. For example, they can trigger actions and they can create interactivity between other objects of any type and so forth. Let's go ahead and double click on this button and take a look at some of the properties. As you can see here, there's a couple of different alignment properties for the text caption, and then we've got the style. So whether we've got a standard or a toggle button, we've already looked at that. Our font colors, so if we want to change our font colors, we can just select them from these color chips here. And as well, you've got options here for spelling, and this is an automatic spell check for the text you type in, and as well selecting the font and whatnot. Here in the Attributes tab, we've got a couple interesting things. We've got our sounds area, which is something we didn't have in our button maker, and this allows you to assign certain sounds to the highlight and click states of your button. Typically I just leave mine set to the standard, but if you like, you can set it to custom, and you can actually surf to your own custom sounds here and attach them to your button states. So that's kind of interesting. And then one of the other things that we have here that we didn't have in the other area is the Tooltip. So if we type something in here, when we preview our project or run our project, we're actually going to see that as floating text when our mouse is held over top of that button, rather like alternate text on the web. So let's look in the Actions pane here. As you can see, there's a couple of different states that are associated to the button. On click, on enter, and on leave. So on click is when you click the button, on enter is when your mouse goes over the button, and on leave is when your mouse goes off the button. Okay, and that's going to be, of course, according to the hit test. So in this particular case, we could attach any action we want to this on click event, and when someone clicks that button, it's actually going to go ahead and activate that action. Let's press cancel to come out of here, and we'll go ahead and actually create a quick project that demonstrates how a button can work. Let's go ahead and create a duplicate page by right-clicking on our Page tab and choosing Duplicate. We'll do that again, and one more time. We'll name this last page in the Properties tab Buttons. And then, I typed it wrong. I'll just go ahead and correct that. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and drag from the project pane our button onto our stage. It becomes part of our project folder once we've dragged that button in there, and we can reuse it as many times as we want. I'm going to go ahead and press Ctrl D to duplicate this button a few times, and then I'm going to select them all by clicking and dragging around them, and then I'm going to distribute and align them. Alright, now I've got these buttons set up. I'm just going to set them down here on the left hand side of my project, and then I'm going to go ahead onto page 1 of my project, double click the page, and then I'm going to choose Gradient from the background options and set up some colors here. I'll set up a yellow and an orange to create a nice little gradient, and then from the Inherit area here, I'm going to choose Objects from Page Buttons, and that's going to bring my buttons onto this page. As you can see, my page is ready to go. It's all set up, and I can just go ahead and do the same thing for my other pages if I want. For page 2 though, I'm going to double click on the page, and this time I'm going to choose Gradient, and I'm going to set up a different color gradient. So for each of my pages, I'm going to inherit objects from the buttons page, but I'm going to put a different color gradient on each page so you can see how these buttons interact with the background colors and so forth with the ping transparency. So page 3, we'll do the same thing. We'll click on there, we'll say gradient. Actually, in this case, let's go ahead and set up an image. So we'll go ahead into our gallery here, and in the Photos section, we're going to go ahead and find an appropriate photo that we like here. I'm just going to click through these and see something nice. There we go, this one's kind of nice. Let's go ahead and choose that. And I'm going to choose Fit to Page, Inherit Objects from the Buttons page, and press OK. And there we go, our buttons are on top of a bitmap. As you can see, it looks beautiful, it's ready to go, looks really professional, and ready to use. The last thing we need to do is attach our actions to our buttons. So we'll go back onto our Buttons page, double click on the first button, and we're going to attach a page jump action. So I'm going to go to the page jump action. I'll leave it set to page 1. Press finish. I'm going to go ahead and copy that action into my clipboard, and I'm going to attach it to the second button, but change it to page 2, and do the same for the third button, and then we can go ahead and set up our captions, and we'll be ready to preview our project. Alright, so in the Attributes tab here, there's a name for each button, and in the Settings tab, you can see there's default text for each button. Okay, the default text is what we want. We'll go to page 3 for this button, because remember we've got the last one selected. Double click on the first button, and in the Settings tab, change it to page 2, and then the first one to page 1. Okay, there we are. Our navigation is set up and we can go ahead and preview our project. I'll press F5 and we should be able to surf back and forth between those 3 backgrounds, and our buttons work perfectly. You can see when we click on the first one we get our first page, second one is our second page, third one is our third page. So this is just a quick example of how you can set up and use your own buttons. You'll notice that when we mouse over these buttons, the shadow changes, of course, and the button pops up, how we had it set up in Photoshop. But the main thing is you'll notice that the pixel data is interacting with the background that we've got. Same thing for each gradient. So that's kind of interesting, and that's the real power of AutoPlay Media Studio, using true ping alpha transparency for the button objects. Okay, let's go on to the next tutorial and we'll take a look at how we can use the toggle